What's up everyone, I'm Ryan Becker, and in this video I'll be discussing several factors that led directly to Ashli Babbitt's tragic death and why it further highlights the need for police reform in the United States. On this channel, I discuss absurd issues in religion, culture, and society, and I try to find ways to navigate them. And I try to make content that helps us have better conversations with those around us. So if that resonates with you and you find this video helpful or enjoyable, then please, it would mean the world to me if you liked this video and left a comment down below. Here's the comment question of this video. How did you feel watching things play out on January 6th? What was going through your mind? Leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Ashli Babbitt, a military veteran with 4 tours and 14 years of service total, died during the assault on the Capitol in which protesters stormed the US Capitol during the election certification. She was shot by a Capitol police officer as she tried to climb through a window to get to the other side of a barricaded door. While I have seen the video, I don't encourage others to do the same, as it isn't for the faint of heart. But if I am going to speak on something like this, then I believe it is important that I research and understand the topic that I am discussing as best as possible. The scene is wild, and it almost feels like you're watching a scene from a zombie outbreak movie. The doors are barricaded on one side, with the crowd on the other trying to get through, but the barricade makes it impossible for the protesters to get through the doors themselves. So there are 3 police officers on the crowd side of the door standing as additional guards, preventing the crowd from directly attacking and trying to break through the doors. What's more is that the guards just leave when a protester warns them that people are coming, allowing the rioters to start beating the doors, trying to break through. The camera then reveals a police officer on one side of the double doors with his gun drawn and pointed toward the crowd on the other side that is trying to push their way in. And it's also important to note that one of the protesters pointed this out and said, "He's got a gun, he's got a gun." And it's also worth pointing out that when the 3 guards move out of the way, this police officer with his gun drawn is the only clearly visible thing standing between the crowd and the House representatives and Mike Pence in the room behind him. He is literally a last line of defense if they manage to get through the barricaded door. Once the guards move out of the way, the crowds move to start beating down the doors and breaking down the glass. And it was at this point that you see Ashli attempt to climb through a smashed window beside the doors. As she does, the police officer fires a single shot that would ultimately take Ashli's life. So here's the question. What would lead someone like Ashli, who has combat experience and military training, to try and climb through a window unarmed while an officer stands weapon drawn on the other side? How does someone arrive at the point where this seems like a logical decision? And I'm glad you asked. Let's walk through some of the situational realities that were true leading to that moment that I believe demonstrate why this happened. Let's walk through some of the situational realities that were true leading up to that moment that I believe demonstrate why this happened in the first place. While there were chants against the police, and even a few can be heard throughout this video, it's important to note that up to this point, several police hadn't really done much to resist the rioters. There are multiple videos of police willingly moving barricades out of the way, waving protesters through, and even taking selfies inside and smiling with those who have stormed the Capitol building. Many rioters believed that the police backed their efforts and supported them, showing resistance more as a form of security theater than anything else. These rioters have faced such little resistance to this point, and even when these doors in front of them are blocked by 3 guards, the guards eventually clear the way too, once again allowing rioters to continue on without impedance. If you're in the group that has just been allowed to press on through obstacle after obstacle, and the mob around you is supporting you and making you feel powerful and unstoppable, then why wouldn't you believe that you could do whatever you wanted? Police haven't done anything yet, so why would they now? Every event leading up to that moment supported the belief that not only would police not harm them, many police would actively help them. Had that officer not followed through on the threat of his weapon when Ashli advanced, the crowd would have likely been even further emboldened, believing nothing could stop them because the only forces that could do so were seemingly on their side. Seriously, many of those present genuinely believed that Capitol Police would join their assault when they arrived, not resist it. And let me be clear, I don't at all believe that Ashli should have died that day, nor do I believe that anyone else should have either. And before it comes up, no, there is absolutely zero parallel between her death and the unjust killings by police of unarmed Black people who weren't actively committing a crime. And if they were committing a crime, those killed in years past weren't doing anything even remotely on the same threat level as storming the US Capitol trying to get elected officials. Just existing in your own home or apartment, Playing with a toy in a park or trying to pay for something with a counterfeit check or bill should not carry the same risk of death, or apparently more, as invading the US Capitol in order to attack elected representatives and actively trying to change the outcome of an election. And if you do not believe that's what they were there to do, there are multiple reports of people bringing flex cuffs or zip tie handcuffs with them, rioters chanting "Hang Mike Pence," and countless posts on social media weeks leading up to January 6 showing that the violence and escalation was planned and intended by protesters present and groups like the Proud Boys. In one post on Parler, Joe Biggs, an event organizer for the Proud Boys, said that many of them were planning to dress up like Antifa during the protest. So even if you want to claim it was Antifa infiltrating, it was probably Proud Boys dressed up as Antifa. And whether or not the police officer who shot Ashli Babbitt knew any of that in the moment doesn't really matter here. Here, he stands as the virtually last line of defense from an angry mob trying to bust down the doors to get to elected officials. It's completely reasonable for him to conclude that their smashing of windows and attempts to break through a barricaded door to get to elected officials didn't exactly imply they were going to talk over some coffee. I would argue that someone dying during the invasion was inevitable the moment that police began actively assisting the crowds as they advanced. It wasn't one police officer's actions that resulted in Ashli's death. It was the actions of several in combination with the crowd who actively egged the crowd on and led them to believe that they were unstoppable. And it's tragic that Ashli died. I fully believe that. I feel terrible for her family and friends who mourn the loss of someone that they loved dearly. But if there is anything that this moment highlights, it's the sheer difference in police treatment of these rioters as they actively stormed the Capitol when compared to moments last year, such as when police and the National Guard escalated a peaceful protest by tear gassing and pushing peaceful protesters and journalists out of the way so that Trump could do a photo op in front of a church. In many cases, prior protests have escalated not because of protesters, but because of police. And this, I'm arguing, is another one of those times. As even though there were many that were present at the Capitol who always intended to escalate things into violence, police action and inaction alike contributed to a complex mix of factors that led Ashli Babbitt and many others to believe that they were invincible and that even God himself was on their side. But what's worse is that many rioters left the Capitol building after the fact, believing even more that police were on their side. After all, who escorted them out peacefully when it was all over? Who didn't make any of them face immediate consequences for what they had just done? Several police officers actively aided a mob's effort to storm the Capitol building, even though many mob members sought to hurt or kill lawmakers. I really want to clarify that I'm not solely blaming police officers here. I am calling attention to the fact that many of the police there that day did virtually nothing prior to this moment to actively de-escalate and prevent further escalation. In fact, I would argue that this police officer was one of the ones that day who actually did his job, taking only one shot only when he absolutely needed to as a last resort. And I would say that for the many others who put themselves in harm's way that day to protect the Capitol and those inside. Those are the police I and many are grateful for, and that we actively want to see more of. The difference between how peaceful protesters last year were treated in many situations, and I'm not talking about the riots or looters, just the many peaceful protests across the US, and how those who stormed the Capitol were treated by police is stark. Higher standards for police conduct, better and more in-depth training, increased accountability, funding reductions, effective alternative forms of policing, and more are calls that I believe are justified and needed. While I believe that we must blame those who stormed the Capitol for their actions, I believe it is dangerous for us to not give proper attention to police action or inaction. It is more clear now, more than ever, that there is a desperate need for police reform across the board. I want more police officers like those who stood bravely and defended the Capitol on January 6. I want more officers who protect and serve, and more officers that we can be proud of. I want more officers who have positive relationships with the communities that they police. I want more police officers who will do everything to de-escalate a situation prior to pulling a weapon. I want more police who do not actively assist those intending harm. And I want those who do to face justice. I think it's more than about time for needed police reform, and I hope you do too. It's not about hating police officers. It's about making sure the police force is a place where good can thrive. It's about protecting the good ones, not removing them. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful or beneficial in any way, then help me out by liking this video by clicking the thumbs up button below. And make sure to answer my comment question of the day below and check out the links in the description for more content like this and the other videos on my channel. Thank you so much for watching.